Hello. I've made this little page here so I could speak to the assignment, how can I impact student engagement in my classroom? And so, of course, I took a look at the Module 3 materials and tried to organize my thoughts as best I can. And so, engagement has three phases: interest, effort and persistence, and then self-regulation. So what I'd like to do is just go down the list and talk about some of my thoughts on how I can do this, and how can I, create an environment in which my students are more engaged than they've been in the past. And so I'd like to start, of course, with interest. So I teach mathematics. One of the things that they recommend is connect to real life. There are times that I know how to do that, and there are times I'm not really sure sometimes how it connects to real life. But at least if I'm mindful of it, I can do that more and more and more. For example, compound interest, I can talk about, in the future they may have to buy a car, or they may have to buy a home, and talk about how that works, and interest rates and things like that. Whatever, but to try to connect with their everyday life, or find something they may not be going through right now. And then second is students' interests and fascinations, to try to connect it to their interests. Sometimes kids aren't that interested in math. Sometimes they are. So I'm going to have to find ways of doing that. But the one that I really think I could do a better job of is giving choices. And I've done that in the past, especially with my Algebra 1, but I would pick a section and give them choices as far as what problems they choose to do, but I would encourage them to do one challenging one, and then, but I've done that in the past. Or another idea is to create a homework menu in which you have several choices that they could do, and they get to pick out of, like, a few choices. And then it was interesting, engaging interest through fun transitions. So as you're going from one task to another, is there some music that I can play that has them understand we are transitioning from what we've been doing to what we need to do? Sometimes I think maybe if we just get up and stretch for 30 seconds before we go to the next section, that might help them remain engaged instead of engaged in what they were doing. It kind of breaks them out of their old pattern. And then 5, self-monitoring skills. So I could probably provide some verbal cues and ask them questions so they self-monitor what they've been doing all day. The second thing is effort and persistence, and I really kind of locked into this idea of grit. A lot of my students do not persist, or if it gets tough, they just want to ask me how to do everything. So, and again, so growing grit, how do you grow gritty kids, or how do you encourage them to become grittier? And grit is basically defined as someone who has grit is someone who has a goal, and they work hard towards that goal, and they adjust and monitor when they have setbacks, but that they have some stick-to-itiveness to the task. They do what's necessary to finish the task. It's called grit, which is kind of the opposite of just quitting when you come up to a roadblock. So, one of the ideas was for them to pursue what is interesting. Maybe that goes back to the choice, right? Like, if they have a choice, maybe it would be more interesting. But the other thing is to encourage kids to practice to get better every day. So growing grit means that they practice every day, and that they may even be practicing with themselves. Like, am I better at this today than I was yesterday? Having them realize that. And another thing is connecting what we're asking to do in math with a higher purpose. So, like, how is this going to benefit me? So, maybe help them, brainstorm ideas on how mathematics in the future is going to be really beneficial towards them. But then another thing with grit, kids who show grit, I think they believe that they can achieve, so they just keep going, right? And they have hope. Building hope is one of the most important things I think I can do. I know this is tough. Of course you can get it. And here's some strategies that you can try. Like if you're having a hard time entering this way, maybe you could enter the task this way. I can help them do that. But of course it's possible. And that when they have a growth mindset, we talk about, believing a growth mindset, there's no innate mathematical ability. Like, this brain is an active muscle. It can be worked. It can be strengthened as you do that. So, for them to have hope that they're not always going to be confused. It just takes work and persistence and hope that it's going to someday pop and they're just going to go, oh my. And then also, like, hey, man, if you're having a hard time sticking with things, are there kids in the room that are gritty? Like, they're just going to get after it. They're going to make sure it's done. So maybe you could sit next to that kid. Maybe what they do and believe rubs off as you go about doing your work. And the last one, I have to admit, I don't feel it's going to be a growth area for me to how to teach kids to self-regulate. I'm not sure how to do that. But I'm willing. My ears are open now. So, like, identifying causes of them not paying attention. Like, what is the cause of me not being focused? Or they might have certain impulses. So for them to be able to reduce, reduce their outbursts, reduce their inattentiveness, what have you. And then, there are strategies to teach kids how to regulate, how to get them to slow down and how to be more mindful and how to, instead of seeing this huge task and getting upset or being intimidated by the size of the task, teaching them how to slow down, maybe teaching them how to break things into manageable chunks, what am I being asked to do and what are some of the skills that I'm going to have to use to do it, but maybe to get them to slow down and to plan. I'm thinking that might be something to help them self-regulate if they can take a task that seems big and then break it down. But, this is, how can I impact student engagement? I think I can do a few little things to do that, to get their interest right off the bat, to teach them how to be gritty and to persist, and then to teach them how to regulate their own emotions and regulate their own thought processes about this. And so those are the three main facets of how can I impact student engagement and engagement. Thank you.